This happened to me on Thanksgiving Day, 3 years ago. I remember the date so clearly because I was sick with a respiratory virus that was spreading everywhere at the time. By Thanksgiving, the fever had passed, and I wasn't contagious anymore. But the chills were still there, and I couldn't go more than a few seconds without coughing. My throat was so raw that speaking felt almost impossible. Even so, I had made a promise to a friend and co-worker who was out of town for the holidays. I had agreed to check on her parrot. The parrot was older and needed daily medication, and I couldn't just back out. She lived only a short walk from where we worked, so it seemed manageable. I had agreed to help before I got sick, and I didn't want to break my word. Around the same time, I was talking with another friend about how we both missed playing tennis and bowling. We had played in high school and kept saying we should do it again someday. My tennis rackets and bowling ball were stored at my father's place. The dorm I lived in was tiny, and there was simply no room for them. I lived in a large city for college and didn't have a car. I relied entirely on public transportation to get around. Because I was sick, I couldn't go back to my father's house for Thanksgiving like I normally would. Still, I was determined to get my gear. I only visited my father a couple of times a year. If I didn't grab my rackets and bowling ball that day, it would be months before I had another chance. That meant months of waiting before my friend and I could actually play. I was stubborn, exhausted, and completely set on getting my things. I came up with a plan. I would take the light rail, get off at a station closer to my father's place, and ask my brother to meet me there with the equipment. On the way back, I would get off the light rail again and take a bus to my friend's apartment to check on her parrot and give her the medicine. The transit system where I live is unpredictable at the best of times. That night, it was worse than usual. As I stood there checking maps, my phone kept saying the bus was 1 minute away. Then it wouldn't show up. I'd refresh the app, and suddenly the next bus was 40 minutes out. Normally, I would have just walked. My friend didn't live very far from the station, but that night, I was a 20-year-old woman, about 5 foot, sick, and weighed down with a 25-pound bowling ball, several tennis rackets, and containers of Thanksgiving leftovers. Walking like that felt impossible. I waited for more than 20 minutes. It was around 9 at night on Thanksgiving, and the bus stop was completely empty. I was the only person there. While I was standing alone, a car pulled up nearby. Inside were several men who looked to be in their early to mid-20s. They were laughing and speaking in another language. I assumed they were just friends dropping someone off. After a few minutes, one of the men got out of the car, and the vehicle drove away. The station itself was fairly large, and I stood a little away from the actual bus stop. I was coughing constantly and didn't want to be near anyone if I could help it. Despite that, the man walked over and sat down directly next to me on the bench. At first, I didn't think much of it. I kept my eyes on my phone, watching the bus arrival time shift again and again. Every so often, I leaned forward to look down the road, hoping to see headlights. A couple of minutes passed. Then, without warning, I felt something touch my shoulder. The man had stood up and wrapped his arm tightly around me. My mind went completely blank. I was so shocked and confused that I froze in place. I couldn't move or speak. After a moment, he mumbled something, as if asking whether I was okay. I quietly told him I was fine and that I was just waiting for the bus. After another minute or two, he let go and sat back down. Every alarm in my head was going off, but I tried to explain it away. Maybe he heard me coughing and thought I was sick. Maybe he saw me leaning forward and assumed something was wrong. I knew those excuses didn't make sense, but I needed them to stay calm. People might wonder why I didn't scream or run. The truth was, this man was well over 6 feet tall and easily twice my size. He was also wearing one of those bandana-style face coverings. It was strange, but it was near the end of COVID, and some people still wore them. And we were completely alone. I didn't want to do anything that might provoke him. A few minutes later, he stood up again and put his arm around me for a second time. This time, he even started stroking my back. I was grateful I was wearing a thick puffer jacket. Just then, I saw my bus approaching. I stayed completely still, telling myself it would be over once I got on. When the bus pulled up, I slipped out of his grip and quietly said that my bus was here. He replied in a way that made it clear he intended to get on with me. I know I should have told the driver, but I could barely speak without coughing. Nothing like this had ever happened to me before, and I was panicking. Once on the bus, I made a deliberate choice to stand. Because of his size, I knew he would have to sit. If I sat down first, he would sit next to me. With him no longer towering over me, I messaged a friend and tried to think through my next move. I thought about calling the police, but I knew he would hear me. I didn't know if he had a weapon. While he had his arm around me earlier, I had already started planning what I would do if he followed me. I knew I couldn't go to my friend's apartment. I also couldn't shake the feeling that the group of men who dropped him off might be connected to him. The stop before my friend's place was my workplace. I worked at a restaurant inside a large outdoor shopping center. It was around 9:30 at night. Even though the stores closed at 9, the entire center had security, and there were cameras everywhere. I knew my co-workers would still be inside finishing their closing tasks. The front doors would be locked, but the employee entrance in the back would be open. To get in that way, I would have to walk through the outdoor trash enclosure first, then enter the code on the back door. When the bus reached my stop, the man got off at the exact same time. He immediately grabbed my shoulder again, this time even tighter. I could only take tiny steps as he held me. I didn't want to suddenly break into a run and tip him off if I wasn't close enough to make it inside in time. As we walked closer to my workplace, my thoughts raced. I kept asking myself whether I'd be fast enough to tear away from him and get through both doors before he could grab me again. Then, suddenly, I got lucky. When we reached the back entrance, the door to the trash enclosure was already propped open. One of the chefs and a co-worker were standing there, talking, with the back door to the restaurant held wide open. That was my moment. His grip loosened just slightly as we walked, and I slipped free. I ran past him and tried to tell my co-worker that a man was following me and that he needed to shut the door. Even though I could barely get the words out, he reacted instantly and slammed it closed. Less than 2 seconds later, the handle began shaking violently. The man started pounding on the door. I explained as best I could that I didn't know him and that he had followed me from the bus stop. We called mall security right away. While we waited, we could see him through the windows, pacing back and forth outside the restaurant. After a few minutes, he walked into the ice cream shop directly across from us. When security arrived, they asked me a few questions. The co-worker who had helped me ended up driving me to my friend's place so I could check on her cat, and afterward, she took me home. A few days later, my manager told me that mall security wanted to know if I planned to press charges. I said I wasn't sure. More than anything, I wanted to know who the man was and what he claimed he was doing there. But my manager never followed up, and I never heard another word about it. To this day, I still don't know what that man wanted, though I have my suspicions. I honestly pushed the entire experience out of my mind. That is, until recently, when the same friend asked me again if I could watch her parrot for Thanksgiving. That's what brought everything rushing back.